What's good, y'all? It is Friday, January 2nd. My name is Patrick, and you are listening to The Morning Show. All right, first things first, rest in peace, Uncle Phil. Always. Secondly, if you are a sports person and you happen to be following the college football playoff that is happening right now, then you are probably well aware that last night the Indiana Hoosiers, currently ranked number 1, also historically not known as a football school, dominated. Let me say that one more time. They dominated the University of Alabama in the Rose Bowl. The score 38-3. The 35-point loss, the largest in Alabama history in a bowl game. If that tells you anything, that's pretty big time. Fernando Mendoza, number 15, Heisman winning quarterback this year for the Hoosiers, went 14 of 16 passing, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns. A quarterback rating of 96.7 out of 100. Basically a perfect game. The offensive line for Indiana received the MVP of the game, the entire offensive line, which is really cool. I don't know. I need to look up whether that has happened before, but I think that's really cool because you don't score that efficiently, and you don't put up that kind of stat line, those kinds of stat lines, if you don't have really, really good play in the trenches up front. So, that's what you're seeing. That's what you saw last night. Alabama, unlike IU, is and has historically been known as a football school. I will say leading into this game, there was a ton of, let's call it dismissal from Alabama fans who should have been feeling, I won't call it grateful because I don't think that the college football playoff process is that great to begin with, but who should be feeling like, okay, we got lucky to be here in the first place because they have 3 losses. I think they're the first 3-loss team to get in since they went to this format, but lots of Alabama fans, lots of people who are from SEC schools, the Southeastern Conference, just talking a lot of smack, talking a lot of shit leading up to this game. And again, these narratives about who has traditionally been good at football and who has not definitely played a factor. I saw one person say that they expected IU to learn their lesson tonight against Alabama, or to learn their lesson against Alabama, because Alabama was going to be the first real team that they played all year, as if they hadn't beaten Ohio State for the Big Ten championship. So I think it was shut a lot of people up. A lot of upset Alabama fans for sure. But that doesn't matter to the Hoosiers because they're moving on. They are moving on to the next round. That is a rematch with Oregon. Another Big Ten school. That's a really long, convoluted process how they got into the Big Ten, but they are going to be playing in whatever the next bowl game is. I tried to pull up the thing, but I can't get it pulled up here. Oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. They're going to be playing in a week at the Peach Bowl. Is that in Florida, I think? the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Right now, -4 favorite for IU, and they beat Oregon earlier this year when they went to Eugene and won on the road in pretty resounding fashion. And I would say that was the win that kind of got people's attention about whether or not IU was for real coming off of last season. So definitely solidified in people's minds outside of Bloomington that they were for real. And to be honest, after watching this game against Alabama, I have to say this looks like the team to beat. IU looks like the team to beat. As a Purdue fan, at the end of the day, I would just like it if our basketball team could win a national championship. That would be great. But I will say on the record that I do hope IU wins this championship. I think it'll be good for the state of Indiana. It'll be good for the sport of college football, if not for me personally. So, go Hoosiers, something I've never said. I don't think ever. But yeah, I think that they've got a clear path back, or a clear path to the championship game. And I would say, depending on who the opponent is, they match up pretty favorably with whoever it could be. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. So the other thing on the docket for today is part 4 of my conversation with Tina Ahlgren. If you're just joining us and you haven't heard any of the other parts of our conversation yet, Tina is a friend. She is also an IPS educator and an IPS parent. She was also the parent advocate appointed to the Indianapolis Local Education Alliances Committee that for the past year or 6 months have been working to create a set of recommendations for how IPS and charter school models can work better together going forward. And so on December 17th, they had their final meeting, had a list of recommendations, and my conversation with Tina has been about that, has been about all things ILEA. So far, Tuesday, we kicked it off with talking about the timeline of all of this, specifically like how everything formed and came together, and why the rushed and really short timeline that they had to work with was always kind of set up for not set up for success, we'll say. On Wednesday, we talked about why Tina voted no on these recommendations. Tina ended up being the only person to vote no. It was 8-1 in favor of sending these recommendations to the State House. And on Wednesday, we got into why it was important for Tina to publicly say, I can't say yes to this. Yesterday, we talked about messaging, specifically around charter schools, charter school models, and Indianapolis public schools. And one of the main pieces that we talked about was a 2011 quote-unquote opportunity report produced by the Mind Trust, which is a charter school lobby here in the state. And that report had a lot of recommendations on it that, while at the time were dismissed, have slowly but surely over the last 15 years found their way piecemeal into the ecosystem. And so today we are going to wrap up our conversation by talking about what comes next, specifically what is going to happen as these recommendations move to the State House. So without further ado, here is the last bit of my conversation with Tina Ahlgren. So you talked about like the worrying about people just kind of giving up if it just continues to kind of move at
the pace that it is, or it gets more confusing, gets more muddled.
Mm-hmm.
And while I do feel like we are probably living in the worst possible timeline that we could be currently living in, it's not great. I feel like we've started to see. I won't call it I won't even call it a change, but like pinpricks of light. That's what I wrote down. Pinpricks of light all around. So I'm thinking of like Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas. I'm thinking of 3 states that are really historically like Indiana, I guess, or maybe even worse, red wise or politically wise, who have like done things that could be mistaken for hope. And we just did that too. I think what happened with redistricting, if I'm being extremely honest, like gave me a lot of hope, because I felt like that was a thing where we could have seen us maintain a status quo, to just not care enough to feel like it was important enough to raise our voices. Now, with that being said, we did that, and we got people to listen. They listened, and we're in a good position, I guess, for the rest of 2026. Fingers crossed. When I think about that, I think about how this issue, which we've been talking about longer than redistricting, is like more universal and more resonant than like a congressional map. It just requires that like messaging and that like getting the word out about what's going on. So with all of that in mind, and with the idea of like, with kind of like that worry of, I don't want people to like lose hope here. What's giving you hope going into 2026?
So the amount of passion that's gone into this entire conversation. I mean, from all sides, right? So, there are voices that were clearly loud, front and center. There were a lot of organizations that were really engaged, but just really the number of people that came out to the ILEA meetings, to the community listening sessions, to voice their opinions, whether it was through public commentary or other ways. Like, again, and even though we disagree on the how, it's thousands of people really productively engaged toward a solution for primarily Black and brown students, right?
Yeah.
And that gives me a lot of hope if we can find a way to get past this, right? So as I said, I would love to be able to like come out the other side of this and be wrong, right? Be wrong. And been like, man, I really could have voted with that because it came out the way I wanted it to, or it came out in a way that I feel good about what it's going to do for kids. But I hope we could get to that point where it's so much less at each other's throats about the details and so much more about helping each other get better. And I say that because not only is it going to result in better outcomes for kids, but man, what power we have as a group when we go to the statehouse together, right? There are so many elements of work, or so many things that need to be worked on at the state level that we haven't been able to collaborate on because we just can't get on the same page. Now, there have been times. So I want to say it was 2022 or 2023. There was a bill that was really anti-DEI. It was about teachers having to like put all their lesson plans publicly to be scrutinized and all of this. And we were the only red state that beat that back. And part of that was because it wasn't just, the teachers union at the State House. It wasn't just, the Stanford children at the State House. It was all of us together. It was students from all types of schools in Indianapolis going and standing up. And it was all of us united on the same front, even though, we weren't coordinating with each other because we're not there yet. But that's what worked, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many things going on, whether it is, should we allow ICE raids in schools, right? What are our state policies on that? Man, if we could stand up together against things like that in a coordinated manner, because we're not bickering amongst ourselves, how powerful could we be? Again, because values-wise, I think we're all there, right? We're all there, but we're not able to coordinate well enough yet.
Yeah. Well, hopefully,
but I have hope in that. I really do.
I have hope in that too.
I really do.
I like to think that I'm involved in some groups that are working on that exact problem. We'll see. We'll see. I appreciate that. gives me more hope because, like I said, like it's easy from an outsider's perspective to just find a feeling and grab onto the feeling. It's also easy to let that feeling go because, again, I'm not maybe directly affected or impacted by the work that's going on. You are one of those people, and in more ways than one. And so to hear that, because I feel like at the end of the day, you could really be like, I'm not hopeful at all because of the history of our legislature for the past 20 years or so, like because of a lot of things, a lot of factors that can create a feeling of despair. And so I appreciate you sharing that because it just like, even in this moment, makes me feel hopeful about this work. Do you want
Well, I say, it is going to be rough at the state house, though, right?
100%.
Yeah, the state house is going to be tough, right? To get those details ironed out in a way that is helpful.
Yeah.
And so I hope that we can also like be mature and calm through that because it's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. There's a lot of righteous anger
For sure.
in a lot of directions.
Well, that's where I want to wrap us up with is kind of like our next steps here. So I want to make sure I have my timeline right. So I read that because our foolish Republican supermajority thought it would be smart to start our next session early in December, that they only now have 3 committee hearings to be able to get bills from committee to floor. So they don't have a lot of time to get stuff from one A to B and then go from there.
Yes.
So that is,
and that I believe that is correct.
Okay.
It is one of the reasons that I am personally skeptical of any bill that makes it to the 2026 session.
Okay.
But I haven't seen, there hasn't been any release of these bills. So
skeptical of the bill itself or skeptical of the bill going through?
Both, I guess I would say. With the level of recommendations we were able to churn out, and technically our final report isn't due until December 31st.
Okay.
Right? I'm not sure how you could get together a bill of any real substance in that amount of time.
Sure.
Yeah. That or right, is it just going to be another high level piece that is going to extend this out, right? Or for me, is it worth waiting till the 2027 session, a longer session to really get it right?
Is there a world where there's like, we're going to make another IELA or we're going to call it back into committee and do this again?
Yeah. I mean, again, I haven't seen there's been talk about Boehning or Delaney carrying a bill, but we haven't, at least I have not yet seen the text of any of those bills. But yeah, I mean, it's potential that it's like continue exploring the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So even more, we're taking little steps up in the Hope Department. Okay. So what specific actions do we need to take right now then? Like, not you, but us. How do we support you? What do we need to be doing as 2026 rolls around?
Yeah, I think it's keep being dialed into what's happening at the session, and it's hard to pay attention to the legislature. It moves simultaneously, painfully slow, and then all at once.
Sure.
And again, who do you listen to? How do you figure out? So I guess finding those couple of sources that you can pay attention to, whether that is in Chalkbeat, we'll have pretty regular articles, but then even some local organizations. Again, like my union, the Indianapolis Education Association, or again, there are lots of other organizations out there that will kind of track bills. And again, actually, one of my biggest sources of information as far as the education world is Teach Plus is a group here in town, and I follow their newsletter to see like what are they looking at, and they have a lot of charter connections there too, so that helps me see like, okay, what are the things that everybody's thinking about. And just keeping track and listening to what people are getting riled up about.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's hard, right? Because sometimes I don't know what to do.
Sure.
And I don't know which horse to make. Just make sure you're informed. And at the end of the day, not let the noise like make your decisions as far as like what you support or what you don't. Try your best to like think through what people's motivations for saying what they might say is. And then again, still having faith that we have there are great public schools here in the city that have great options, and don't forgo putting your children in the public schools just because of the uncertainty of what's going on right now. Because I think that's my biggest fear.
Totally.
Whether it's parents choosing that or even teachers, right? I've done so much work around teacher retention. I'm really nervous that our educators will also just say like, I don't want to deal with this.
So actually a question I just thought of while you were talking, which I thought I should have thought of earlier because you brought it up. But as like the head of the union, how much does this impact the teachers union?
Well, like as of right now, I mean, nothing particularly in the plan.
Sure.
Short of, again, like how much power is taken away from our school board, right? Which we work directly with on a lot of things. But again, that's still up in the air. How much authority is shifted that direction. But in theory, right, like all of our contracts and things should stay in place under Indianapolis Public Schools elected board. The challenge again too is though the right sizing has to happen. What's that going to look like? Is it going to, it's one of my biggest fears is that, IPS has done a lot of right sizing.
That's what we were talking about in the spring.
Right. But I think I said that last time too, is that our fear is that it's going to continue just to be on IPS to like continue to shrink versus looking at the entirety of the ecosystem. And I mean, this is probably going to extend this conversation
That's okay.
way too
Go
far.
now that I want to hear more about it.
No,
actually,
I mean, I think one of the biggest differences when I think about like, some of the proposals over the years have been like wanting an all charter ecosystem or all autonomous school ecosystem. And where I keep running into like that being a terrible idea comes down to, does a school, or in this case, we have an entire system, have to be financially sustainable on its own to be of value to a community? And I don't think that answer is yes.
Sure.
I think that a school, whether it's the program that it serves, whether it's the neighborhood that it's in, can have a need to exist without being financially self-sustainable. And that's where you need a district type structure to be able to sustain it. And right now the kind of the charter model is very much if you're not financially sustainable, you just close.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that means that there are probably some good charter schools out there that probably would have been great continuing to serve children.
Sure.
But then went by the wayside. Right. And so I fear that, if IPS continues to shrink and shrink and shrink, right, it's all about financial sustainability.
Yeah.
And at what point do we look at the financial picture of the whole and not the individual, right? Because that's, again, I keep referring to it as like, I'm a big baseball fan. So MLB revenue sharing, right? This idea that there are plenty of MLB teams out there that are not able to, I mean, they have lots of money, but they technically like they would fold, right?
The
if
A's
it
just
were
moved to Las Vegas for
right?
this exact reason.
They would fold if they were on their own, but the Yankees are over there making a ton of money. And so like you use the extra revenue from the Yankees to support the smaller teams because there's an understanding that you need teams in all of these different cities for there to be a league, for there to be a sustained system. And so I keep, when I talk to non-school people, that's kind of how I explain it, that for me, I think it's an unanswered question as we continue down this road of more autonomy and more independence. At what point does it not make sense to just keep looking out for each entity on its own? Right. And again, and whether that's Indianapolis Public Schools as a whole, or whether that's each individual school, I think that common accountability metrics will help us get to a point where maybe we can say, wait a second, IPS needs to close some more schools, but they're not actually the lowest performing. Like, what does that mean? And we can have a deeper conversation down those roads.
Well, because essentially you could be like, okay, is there a world where this like well-performing charter could then exist in the facility of the school that doesn't need, or I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know.
I think we're gonna get some interesting arrangements, like particularly around facilities once all this falls out, because again, if it seems that facilities and buildings is kind of where the control will land. So if if a particular entity is not serving students well, then they won't have access to the building, and in theory someone else would. Although we do need fewer schools still. So One of the other pieces I know we focused on a little bit was making sure community was involved in reuse conversations, because if a school is not going to exist in that space, we want to make sure it's not a blight on the community either going forward.
Yeah.
Because it's such a complex issue across all boards, right? But I do still have hope that there's going to be some really positive moves out of this plan, and I hope that that the community can unite at the State House in a way that we can make sure that we're not giving. Like I said, I would love to not see that trade-off away from elected governance.
Yeah.
But really, just at the end of the day, like keeping kids front and center of that, and making sure that our kids are protected through the State House moves. That's my number one goal.
All right. 2 things to wrap all this up. The first one is massive, major, monumental thanks to Tina for taking time out of her break to come and sit down and have a conversation with me and just be open, vulnerable, and honest about what has been going on with this committee. Not that they haven't been doing things publicly, even though the mayor wanted to do things privately. We can at the very least say that they have had public meetings. You heard us talk about it this week. But rarely are people willing to go out and not only stand on business when it comes to what they not only provide like the facts and clear up any, misinformation that might be out there about the work that they were involved in, but to also stand on business about why, specifically for Tina, she could not in good faith get behind these recommendations. And so that quality, I don't think is so. Actually, just kidding. That quality is what makes her a great teacher. It's what makes her a great advocate for public education. It's what makes her a really great community member, not just in her school, but in her actual community, in the community of Indianapolis. And it's what makes her a great human being overall. Like this willingness to have tough conversations and to just say what it is. And know that you're still going to go back and keep doing this and keep fighting. You're not just going to say your piece and leave. You're saying your piece because this is the next step in the process of fighting for the things that we should probably already have access to. So thank you to Tina for, again, being an incredible person. The second thing is that we have work to do. And when I say we, I mean me, I mean you, I mean anybody who lives in the city of Indianapolis, anybody who lives in Marion County, anybody who lives in the state of Indiana. We have work to do. It goes beyond education, but part of the reason or part of what has gotten us to this point with IPS has been the intentional misinforming of us citizens about what is going on and why it's happening by folks by organizations like the Mind Trust. Another part is that too many of us, because of a lot of external systemic or systematic pressure, find ourselves settling into a mindset of it doesn't matter, or it doesn't directly affect me, or it's like I just don't have the time. Apathy. I think we talked about it. I think I mentioned it in this conversation with Tina. Apathy. And that, it's one thing to say that. It's another to be able to back it up with data. And I probably wouldn't have this data point had I not had a recent conversation with my favorite state senator, Andrea Hundley, who shared on this very show that in our last general election, 101,000 registered voters in Marion County did not vote. over 300,000 in Indiana did not vote. That's a lot of votes. That's a lot of people's voices not being heard and therefore subsequently not being adequately or appropriately represented when it comes to policies and decision making that occurs that will affect those folks. And if not them directly, people within their circles, their family, their community members, neighbors, whoever it might be. We have to show up. If not, here's the thing. If we all just showed up and like we voted this way, like, and we continued to show that we were going to vote for harmful people that produce harmful policies, then I think, like I couldn't really complain about it not showing up. Like at the very least, people are like saying, okay, this is what we want. We want a worse life. But I don't think that's the case. And I think that we have been pushed so far to the margins that it really does a lot of times feel like my voice, my vote doesn't matter. And I got to be honest, it could not be further from the truth. And the reason I know that, and I think this might be something that Senator Hundley also said, but the reason I know that your vote and your voice matters, and the reason I know that they know this, is because they would not try so hard to make it so much more difficult to vote, to utilize your voice in this democratic process if they thought that it didn't matter. Think about that. I'll be releasing my full conversation with Tina sometime next week to my paid subscribers on Substack. So if you're interested in listening to the full uncut version of that conversation, feel free to subscribe or upgrade if you're already subscribed as a free subscriber. Appreciate you. And drop a like or a thumbs up on whatever platform you're joining us from. It helps the channel. It helps us go farther, take things further, do things bigger, better. I don't know. We're just doing the show. And if you do like what you're hearing and you do decide to subscribe, make sure that you turn on your notifications so that way you don't miss any new content that we put out, which is basically every day. Speaking of, next Monday, episode 10, if you can believe it, will be a solo episode with yours truly. There have been some people joining me over on Substack, and I feel like new year, new P, new year, same P, gotta share who I be. That's what I'm saying. So if you're interested in me personally, next Monday's episode is going to be the one for you. Anyways, until then, I have been Patrick Armstrong, and I hope you have a great weekend.